Hey lovelies, it's Alexa with Blue Woods Design, and I'm here for week 3 of our Faces and Florals collaboration. We are talking abstract, and this is the girl I end up creating. Oh my goodness, I really love how she turned out, but I will tell you, it did not go according to plan. It was a journey to get there. But I kept in all those moments where I had to change up what I was doing or it didn't go how I thought it would in my head. I kept it all in here because I want everyone to realize that no matter how long you've done this, like things don't always go the way you plan in your head. And you honestly there's options, right? You could totally just give up and be like, scrap it, done, didn't work. But you could also kind of persevere. You can push through, you can pivot and think a little differently outside the box. Let yourself let go of what you thought something would be and decide to make it something new. And in the end, you'll end up like really happy with what you come up with, or you don't, and then you just scrap it at that point. But generally speaking, if I kind of really let myself let go of what I expected and surrender to what it wants to be and what it's becoming, I tend to find that I really like the piece. And I will say, in general, I think the journey of creating is sometimes like the bigger lesson, right? So while I just make a lot of faces, I think there's a lot of moments where I feel myself, like finding the need to apply something that's a bigger life lesson in what I'm doing, right? And so when things don't go your way, the concept of continuing on, that's kind of a hard one. So we can start in our art journal and then maybe it'll like totally translate to our life, right? So today we're doing abstract, and what I did was I sketched my face, and I will say that the way I approach abstract with faces is I start with my basics. I actually grid out my face the way I would normally, but then I start to move and alter features. So obviously I dropped one eye. I kind of made them two different shapes. I made the lips kind of wonky and go way off to the side. I gave her really geometric hair. So those are ways that I start to move into abstract. So if you're not as comfortable with abstract, it doesn't have to be so crazy abstract, right? It can be something where obviously it's still recognizable as a face and it came from those same grid lines we always do, but you're just altering things and making it look a different way than it would normally look. So today I am showing you another technique with my Neo 2s. I really wanted to create with different mediums throughout this challenge. And I was like, well, I really used Neo 2s in that first video as like a watercolor. And the thing is, one of my favorite ways to use my Neo 2s is like full on. I am coloring really hard with them. I push really hard and I get a lot of saturation of color and I start blending with my fingers. I did not prep my page with gesso, so they move a little bit, but not crazy. If you had gesso on your page, they would probably move a little bit more. But it does what I want it to without the gesso, so we go there. So this is a really fun technique. You just start to really lay that color on thick. Like I said, I am pushing hard with these crayons. But the effect is super beautiful. It's super saturated and they blend really well. A lot of art crayons you could do this technique with, but I like the Neo 2s because they kind of fall in the middle for me where they blend with my finger pretty good, but they don't blend too much, right? Some art crayons kind of stick where they are no matter what. And then other ones that I have can blend, but even like they're just like too smushy and they move too much. So these kind of fall in that perfect middle for me. So the other thing you saw me do was tape off my page. So I had this really great plan in my head of doing this abstract face and having these negative spaces that cut through her face, which obviously I'm doing. But what I was going to fill those negative spaces with was something different than how it ends up turning out. So once we get to that point, I'll walk you through what I planned. But so that's why I have it all taped off. The great thing about it is washi tape is really pretty good about being like removable, and I can color right on top of it and it's no problem. As you can see here, I'm coloring just straight over top. One of the things I did decide with the hair was, instead of going with just one color, I decided to use kind of the warms and cools and balance it out. So one side of her face definitely has warm tones to her skin, so the hair on that side has the cooler tones. And that's just, again, to make these high contrast bits. The other thing about it is that it feels very like it kind of goes with the abstract theme for me, because, you know, it's a very rainbowified face, right? Like doing those colors that are not your traditional skin tones, I think also ventures into creating an abstract piece. Her eyes, I am also not putting a pupil in because I just love how the blending came out. And if you look at that, like the right eye, the one with the pinks and reds. So one of the other great things about the Neo 2s is I layered that from dark to light. So I actually did red and a darker pink, and then I came in with a light pink, and I could go right over top of it, and it works really well. It blended and created right on top of it. You could do this again with any other art crayons or even like oil pastels, things like that. But you know, we're just looking for saturation and a little bit of blending. And you see me here kind of blocking off her little scribble mouth that I did. I didn't want the black to go right up next to it, so I created this like negative space border, which, like I said, things don't go the way I think they're going, so that will disappear as well. But I did love her little scribble mouth. I'm going to have to do another girl with that because eventually that's not on here at the end, but I do like how that looked. Okay, so now I'm pulling up my washi tape, and for the most part, washi tape peels up pretty good. Right there, I had a little part that started to pull up, and the answer to that is I then start from the other side, and I pull really slow, and usually I can salvage it. And then the little part that pulled, I just kind of glued back down. No big deal. Okay, so here's where my plan does not go the way I think it does. Okay, so my plan was to then doodle flowers in these negative spaces. And in my head, I had a vision and I thought it would work. Now, it's not to say it doesn't work, but I'll show you why in the end. But my vision of it, I think I was thinking of larger white spaces and or maybe a less dramatic face, I guess. Because what ends up happening is I start doodling these flowers, and I do quite a bit of it because it's relaxing and I love it. And I thought, you know, like, let me first commit to it and see. Because at first I was like, I don't think it's working. I'm not loving it. But I stuck in there just to give it the chance to see if it would work, right? So I'm doodling kind of like mandala type flowers, and it feels really relaxing and I love it. Now here's where it is. I did not like it. It was too busy. I'm looking at it now on my screen, and I don't hate it, but in person, I was like, this is too busy. I cannot even see my girl through these crazy marks and stuff like that. I think if I had larger spaces or larger doodles or just a different face, it might have worked. And I do think it's a concept that I'm going to play with again, but not for today. So what do? I was like, all right, I'm going to paint these over, and we're going to have black instead of the negative space being white, which I really loved the white. It was such a great contrast, but I'm like, well, all right, can't do that. I got to paint over it. So I did think about painting over it white, but I'm like, that will take a lot to cover up all those dark black and white doodles. So you'll see here that I'm just going in with a brush, and I'm being really deliberate, especially when I'm around the face. I'm just being really careful. And now I'm going to keep a few of these lines to start with. And the reason being is because, honestly, I'm still wanting to salvage this idea that I had in my head, which had these white, bold, contrasting lines going through. And we all know what it means, like when something doesn't go your way and then you just like try to like white knuckle and make it happen. It never happens. So I will say these white lines do go away. But the reason I tried to keep some of them around was because when I saw that one with the polka dots going through the middle, I kind of dug it. I was like, oh, that looks really kind of cool. So I toy with the idea of doing these dotted white spaces. But here's the deal. I also know that now that my doodles didn't happen, I still need to work in my florals somehow. And my thought was doing it around the eyes. I started to feel like, again, it would get too busy if I did that again. Like if I had these dots and I had all these lines and this abstract face. So I blacked right over it. I just was like, okay, black them all out, make it like a stained glass feel. And now, again, just like I reused my Neo 2s, but in a totally different way, I decided, hey, I'll show you what you can do with a flower punch that doesn't have to be as literal as punching out a flower and gluing it on. Because here's the deal. We buy a punch out and it's like you can only use it so many times before it starts to be like you see it everywhere. So this is one of the flower punch outs that I had that I used in the last video. However, it totally doesn't look like the same thing because I punched out the flowers and I'm just tearing off the little petals, which is also a great thing because I think sometimes with abstract, part of being abstract is using things in unconventional ways. And what's so cool about it, instead of it looking like I made her eye like a true, very literal, very realistic flower, instead it's this cool like design element that leans towards floral and has petals, so like it fits that challenge idea, but it also fits the challenge idea of it being abstract, right? Like, so it doesn't have to be super literal flowers. It's a nod to flowers, if you will. So I actually started to really love it at this point. And even though everything went sideways and not the way I planned, I was like, oh, I got it. Like, I love it. I wanted that white contrast and those petals were perfect. And now I'm coming in with my white paint pen and I'm putting in those little highlight bits and the extra contrast. And here's again where I'm toying with that little scribble of a mouth and I just want it to be there, but it's just looking out of place. Like once I stepped back and looked at the whole of the piece, I was like, it has a certain feel and then that thing kind of just stands out to me. So I didn't actually record how I fixed it because I kind of thought I was done. And then I sat back down and was like, I just got to cover this up. So again, that was me holding on to something. Holding on to that scribbled mouth was like holding on, like white knuckling it. But then I just blacked it out and I decided, oh my gosh, it looks so great just like this. So here's my girl. She's totally abstract. The flowers are abstract. They're like a nod to flowers. They're petals. They're not even really flowers. So I hope you guys will try out some new techniques and have fun with this abstract idea. I cannot wait to see. Make sure you tag us sometime this week so that you can enter to win our giveaway. Thanks for watching, guys.